Hi everyone, it's Dutch Reefer here and welcome to a new Reef Keeping 101 video. If you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe and like this video, which will help me grow this channel even further. So let's get into this video. Today we will be talking about my nano reef tank, and the subject of today is how to deal with little plagues and pests inside a smaller reef tank. So to give this a little preface, in a larger tank it's quite easy to just add some fish or other creatures to minimize the amount of pests in your tank. But in a smaller tank it's often more a manual process in where you have to remove these pests or find a way around removing them or getting rid of them without adding too much bioload to your tank. Because as you can imagine, it would not be a great idea to add a big fish like a foxface to a small 100-liter reef tank. So this is a Reefer Nano, Red Sea Reefer Nano, which is around 100 liters in total, about 20 liters for the sump and about 80 liters in the display tank. So I cannot add too much fish to this tank because it will increase the bioload by a lot, and it will of course be a very small confined space for whatever fish I'm adding to this tank. So I have kept the amount of living fish and creatures in this tank to a minimum. There's two little clownfish in here, which you can see on the bottom left. There's a cleaner shrimp right here. There's a codorniz, which is probably currently swimming somewhere at the back of the tank, and a small grazing blenny. But other than that, those are the most noticeable creatures in this tank. Of course, there's always still this small crab as well. But other than that, I'm trying to keep the amount of bioload creating creatures as low as possible inside this tank. So let's get a quick tour around this nano reef, and I'll show you which kind of things you need to take into account, because at first glance this might seem like a fairly clean and balanced reef, but if you do some close-ups and you look much closer, then there's certainly some pests in this tank as well that I need to manage in order to keep it clean and to keep the corals and the fish and all the other creatures in here healthy. So let's start off. One of the most prominent things that you will notice in a reef tank, whatever reef tank you have, is glass roses or glass anemones. And those are quite difficult to get rid of. For example, in my big tank I have a copper band butterfly fish that will devour these things like it's breakfast. But in a tank like this, it's a lot harder to get rid of. Currently I don't have that many inside the tank, so I can't show you a lot. Aiptasia is also a name you could give these. So it's glass roses, glass anemone, or Aiptasia. But I'm using a bit of Aiptasia X by Red Sea, and there's also Joe's Juice, which is another product that you can use to get rid of these Aiptasia. And the easiest way is to turn off the current in your tank. So just turn off the circulation pumps and use a syringe to dose on each of these Aiptasia a little bit of Joe's Juice or Aiptasia X. They will in the end devour this, and it will cause them to kind of implode because it's very damaging to them. And I've also heard people doing the same thing with vinegar, a mix of vinegar, but then Aiptasia X and Joe's Juice are nice thick solutions that you can really dose specifically on the anemone or the Aiptasia itself, and you will get rid of it for sure. So that's one. The second one is bubble algae, and these are very much present inside this tank, as you can see right here. So this is a returning feature which is very hard to get rid of, and in fact once you have these inside your tank, it's very hard to get rid of them. There are some ways. One way is to add a fox face. Of course, that's not a good solution for this tank, because a fox face is a fish that will get fairly large. And while I might be able to put in a really small one and then put it in the big tank as soon as it grows, I already have one of those, so that's not a good solution. So there's two things that I've done. In the past, I've just moved this entire reef structure into my big tank for a couple of days to let the fox face do its bidding, and to just eat away all the small bubble algae that are in here. Of course, you need to have a big tank or another tank to actually do this. So if you don't, then you can either remove them manually, for example with a hose. You can just poke them a bit and just scrape them from the reef. But be careful not to damage them, because once you break the small bubble algae, then they will release spores into your water, and they will actually increase in volume. So whatever you do, be careful not to break these small bubbles, otherwise they will increase in numbers. So that's a very good thing to remember. There's also emerald crabs, Mithrax crabs, which are green crabs, which also tend to eat bubble algae, but they might also damage some other corals or creatures in your tank. So be sure that before you buy any of these, you read into them, but they might be able to help you get rid of that problem as well. So we've handled Aiptasia and bubble algae. And another one is normal cyanobacteria. So if you have had a reef tank, or you have a reef tank, then at some point, everyone at some point is bound to get some cyanobacteria in their tanks. And that's the same for my tank. So right here, I'm going to change my water, or 20% of my water, in an hour or so. But for this video, I've decided to do it, to shoot this video before that, so that I can show you, because there's actually two types of cyanobacteria inside this nano reef tank at this moment, and those are green cyanobacteria and red cyanobacteria. They are the same kind of bacteria, algae, if you might call them, and there's the same way of getting rid of them. One of the best ways to get rid of this kind of algae is to improve the water flow inside your tank. So I've actually cleaned out these two power heads that I have right here earlier this week, because they were very much stuffed with other stuff, algae and other detritus. So in time, that should help to get rid of this. Another solution is to just siphon off some of this from your sand. That's a very good solution, because by siphoning it off, you will remove the bacteria from the tank, and by also increasing your flow or improving your flow, you will actually make sure that it won't return. Sorry, that was the dog. Not sure what it did there. And one other method of getting rid of this cyanobacteria is to, so there's siphoning it off, there's increasing flow. Oh yeah, adjusting your lighting schedule. So there's a lot of light on this tank. As you can see, there's 6 clusters of LEDs coming from the MaxSpect L165 LED fixture. And if I wanted, I could reduce the light by about 20% to get rid of this in the end. So a combination of increasing your water flow, siphoning it off, and decreasing the amount of light that's on your tank, or decreasing the total hours of light that are on your tank, that's also a possibility, will ultimately get rid of this stuff in your tank. Other than that, it's pretty normal to have a bit of cyanoalgae over time, so don't be too worried about it. But in the end, a tank looks much better without it, so I can imagine that you want to get rid of it as soon as possible. There's one more very well, very destructive is a big word, but it's quite a little bit more destructive. And that's there's some produce on the market that are called, for example, red slime remover or Cyano-X. And those are also products to get rid of cyanoalgae or bacteria in your tank. But you have to do big water changes afterwards. So if you have a tank with a bit more water volume, that will be quite costly because you need to do a big water change, for example 50% after you treated your tank. So those are the main pests that I have found inside this nano reef. Of course, there's always some of the normal or regular green algae that might develop in a tank over time. I'm going to show you a bit. For example, here, as you can see right here, there is some green algae here. It's a bit of a nuisance here as well. But then again, having a little bit of algae inside your tank is not the end of the world. One product that I found very useful to use to get rid of this is Reef Flux. And Reef Flux will remove this within a couple of weeks. You will need to do a water change afterwards, and you need to turn off your mechanical filtration while you're dosing this Reef Flux. But it's very useful and very convenient to use when you have a lot of green algae inside your nano reef tank. So in that, I think I discussed most of the common pests and nuisances that might occur in your reef tank, in your nano reef tank. I hope this helped. I hope you liked the video. Like I asked in the beginning, if you do, please feel free to subscribe and like this video. And yeah, I hope you stay safe out there. It's good to see that the COVID crisis is slowly coming towards an end, depending of course in what country you're in. I wish you the best, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, have a great week and see you later. Thank you very much. Bye bye.